today in Rich in Relationship. We're going to talk about the tools for building real connection, vulnerability, and intimacy in your marriage. And I want to be clear, trust is a decision. It's not something that happens. When people don't feel they can be vulnerable with each other, they don't share themselves with one another. Welcome to another episode of Rich in Relationship. I'm your host, Rich Heller, and today we're talking about the power of the V word, vulnerability, building trust and safety in your marriage. And we're building on the last episode, which was all about how to start being proactive in your marriage. So if you haven't heard that episode, you really want to. It's going to be really hard to practice what we recommend in this episode if you haven't got a handle on what we talked about in the last episode, which is about creating a mindset of proactivity. Have you ever struggled to truly open up with your partner or felt that your relationship lacks the depth you desire? Well, the missing piece is going to be vulnerability. When people don't feel they can be vulnerable with each other, they don't share themselves with one another. We are hopefully managing our emotions better with our new mindful attention that we created from the last episode. We've prepared the landscape through talking with our partner about how we really want to be present with one another and how we're going to manage our reactivity so that we can be proactive. We've set a landscape with our partner for vulnerability to begin to be created. Vulnerability does not happen overnight. Well, rarely happens overnight is probably a better way to put it, especially if you've been in a very reactive relationship. Are you holding back out of fear of being hurt or just judged? Vulnerability allows both partners to be fully known, laying the groundwork for genuine intimacy. Vulnerability means sharing our true selves, including our fears, insecurities, including our guilt and shame, including our warts, farts, burps, and all. It invites authenticity, fostering a sense of security and acceptance between partners. I mean, listen, when you recognize your crap smells bad and your partner does too, and they still want to be around you because they see how awesome you are, what better feeling is there? When we're open and honest, 100% open and honest, 100% transparent, we create an atmosphere where trust can be built, can grow. Really, trust is a decision. We'll talk about that more. When both partners are practicing the tools that they need, they create vulnerability. They strengthen the bond of mutual respect and safety. Are your conversations often reactive rather than caring and constructive? Caring communication is the backbone of a relationship where vulnerability thrives. What that looks like in real life isn't that it's always all lovey and cushy and wonderful. What it looks like in real life is when we run out of the ability to manage what comes out of our mouth, or when we feel triggered and something comes out automatically and we wish we hadn't said it. We have the mental and emotional capacity to stop instead of proceeding down that slippery slope. We have the ability to stop ourselves first and say, ooh, that hurt them. Or, ooh, it hurt me to say that and it hurt them. And next to say, I'm so sorry. That just came out sideways. Let me think about how I can rephrase that. Or it might be as basic as, you know what? I really didn't mean that. I'm not in a good space right now. Let me just take a few minutes to reset so I can be my best self. It might be something like that. When we've got mindfulness, meditation, and prayer in our life on a regular basis, which is part of what we talked about in the last episode, we now have the emotional bank to draw on within ourselves and the mental capacity. We've developed the muscle of our cerebral cortex enough so that we can stop ourselves before we get in too deep. Caring communication isn't just about stopping ourselves when something less than caring comes out, however. Caring communication is about having a sense of how what we are saying or going to say will impact the other person. Not an imagined, disconnected sense, but a real and grounded sense, because we have been working on mindful communication with them. We have an idea of how what we say and how we say it is going to impact them. And so we're careful about what we say and how we say it. If we're going to share something that we know is sensitive for them, we might even, because we care, frame that communication in a caring way. It might look something like this. Something came up for me today, and I need to share it with you. And it's a subject that's been reactive for both of us in the past. And I want to be really clear. Where I want to go with this is healing for both of us. I want us to be closer at the end of this conversation. And so I'm going to be very careful about how I say it. At the same time, if you feel that I'm not being as careful as I could, please feel free to stop me so that I can rethink my approach, because I want to share this with you in the most caring and compassionate way possible. I'd be putting a frame on it. And then you proceed. And then they have permission to say, wow, I feel criticized right now. I can't talk about that. Or wow, that was amazing. I can't believe the compassion that you express that with, or whatever's coming up for them. By putting a caring frame on particularly sensitive subjects, we begin to build safety. The safer that we can make it for our partner in our conversations with them, the more likely they are to make a decision to trust us, and vice versa. And I want to be clear, trust is a decision. It's not something that happens. When our behavior and their behavior has been caring and careful, it begins to feel safe. And when it feels safe enough, we make a decision that we can share, we can open up and share a little more. We can be a little more vulnerable, right? First, we feel safe. Then we make a decision to trust. And then we take a risk and be vulnerable. And we might want to take that risk the same way that I suggested we share something sensitive. We might want to say something like, I'm going to share something with you that I haven't shared with you before. I'm going to take a chance here. And I'm letting you know this because how you react might be the difference between whether this decision I've made to trust here is valid or not. And so I want you to really get that this is something I have a lot of sensitivity about this. And basically what we're alerting our partner to is, I've made a decision to trust you. And it's really important to me that that trust is validated. Help me to validate that trust. So caring communication is about setting boundaries for ourselves. There are ways that I will not speak to my partner. There are things that I know my partner's sensitive about that I will not talk about, except in the most caring and careful kinds of ways. It's about setting boundaries with them. There are ways that my partner's spoken to me in the past that may come up in the future, because we're not perfect. In the same way that sometimes I let something out, I don't catch something before it comes out. I haven't exercised my cerebral cortex, my prefrontal cortex, so to the point where it's perfect. Or sometimes my energy, the emotional energy that I have gets lower than I think it is, and I make a slip. Or sometimes my unconscious mind puts something out there that it feels needs to be put out there, but the timing maybe isn't as perfect as it could be. That's going to happen. So the boundary I'm going to set with them is, if they break trust with me by being less than caring with me in some way, shape, or form, in a way that I find hurtful, I'm going to show them grace by saying, hey, I'm not receiving that very well right now. I need to step out of this conversation for a few minutes, and let's rephrase this and start over. I'm going to show them the grace that I would want them to show me. The grace is that they probably didn't mean for it to impact me the way that it did. And if they're really triggered and I recognize it, I'm going to step out. But instead of saying, you're really triggered, I'm stepping out, what I'm going to say is I feel like this conversation is not one where I can be my best self right now. And so I'm going to step out. And when I feel like I've reset, let's jump back into it. Right? Boundaries are things that in this kind of relationship, in these moments, we're setting boundaries so that we feel safer and so that they feel safer. And that's how we build safety and build trust. And very often building safety and building trust through caring communication, through this frame of caring, being careful, caressing my partner emotionally and verbally, is one that's 2 steps forward and 1 step back sometimes, or maybe it's 3 steps forward and 1 step back. But there will generally be a step back because that's how we learn. You know, we're moving from being reactive to being proactive. We're moving from saying whatever the hell comes up to being careful about what we say. We're moving from one thing to another. And there's lessons that come with that. And lessons come out of missteps or mistakes or failures or whatever word you want to put on that. Or another way to put it would be just like we build physical muscles by tearing the muscle, by pushing that muscle to the point of failure, we build mind muscles and emotional muscles the same way. We need to take risks. And when we take risks, inevitably, the decision to trust is broken in some small way or a big way, depending on the risk. We don't want to take huge risks. We want to take small, controlled risks and build safety step by step. So if you've reacted defensively or closed off emotionally, all you need to do is take ownership, apologize, and amend the behavior. We just acknowledge, hey, I slipped up. That's not who I want to be around you. When emotions start to run high, like I said, just take some time to breathe and refocus. You want to make vulnerability a regular practice, because by making vulnerability a regular practice, you're going to become closer and more intimate, and your emotional state together is going to blossom and grow. Your sex life will be off the hook over time. If you want to maintain a deep connection with your partner, vulnerability has to be consciously cultivated regularly, not just in challenging moments. Set aside time for open conversations where you share your experiences, your fears, your aspirations with each other. Make vulnerability a consistent part of your relationship. And the long-term benefits, relationships that embrace vulnerability experience stronger bonds. They resolve differences better, have less destructive conflict. They have increased emotional resilience. And when vulnerability is normalized, it becomes a source of strength and connection. So here's your call to action. Practice one small act of vulnerability. This act might even be, honey, I'd like to be more vulnerable with you. Let's talk about how we might do that together. And the punchline might be, hey, we need to get some help. We don't know how to do this on our own. You know, a lot of the things we talk about on this podcast are easier to learn with the help of somebody who's been there and understands it. And when you have expert help, your chances of success are increased incrementally, dramatically even. If you're liking what you're hearing, I want you to like and subscribe to this podcast and share it with your friends. Think about what vulnerability means in your life and have a wonderful tomorrow.